Hi everybody, I'm Jacqueline Wolf, Wolf Real Estate with Moomaw Realty Group and Brokerage United Real Estate. And today we're going to be talking about surveys and how to read them in the contract. So if I'm your agent, let's say, and you're my buyer, we're going to put in an offer, and it's called 1 to 4 residential contract. That's what you're going to look at the top, and you're going to go to page 3. So it should be paragraph 6C, and you'll see where it says survey. And so there should be like 3 boxes, really, like a C1, a C2, a C3. C2 and C3 are pretty self-explanatory. It just says, on 2, it's buyer to obtain a survey at the buyer's expense. That's, the buyer's paying for it, and they're going to order it. The 3 is for the seller to obtain a survey at the seller's expense. So obviously the seller will pay for a survey. And this is all if the seller doesn't already have one. If the seller already has a survey, then the seller's going to provide that survey anyways with a T47 that's notarized, and provide that. And then there's no expense to anybody. But if there isn't a survey, again, you're going to check 6C2 if the buyer is going to pay for it, and the buyer wants to go ahead and pay for the expense of ordering one if the seller doesn't have one. And 6.2, the seller didn't provide one, they're going to go ahead and take the expense of ordering one. Because in the state of Texas, we cannot close a transaction without a survey. So there has to be one. Someone's going to pay for it, or hopefully the seller just already has one. But the trickier one to understand is 6C1. So that gets a little complicated, and I just want to make sure that when you read it, you understand what it says and means. So let's go, let me read it off to you word for word, and let's see how I can explain this, and hopefully you understand. So when selecting 6C1, this means the seller does have a survey, and they need to provide the survey along with the T47 that is notarized to the buyer within the time frame selected. If the seller does not have a survey, let's see, if the seller does not provide those items with the agreed upon time frame, then the buyer will obtain a new survey at the seller's expense. So remember, 662 is like the buyer will pay for it, the buyer will order it. 6C3, the seller will pay for it, the seller will order it. But this is saying the seller does not provide those items, the buyer will order it, but it will be at the seller's expense. If the seller provides the survey in T47 and buyer and buyer's lender does not accept it, then the financial responsibility of the survey falls on the shoulder of the selected. And that would be either the buyer shall obtain a new survey at seller or buyer's expense no later than 3 days prior to the closing date. So again, slow it down a little bit. 6C1 says if the seller does not have the survey or T47, the buyer will order it, but it will be at the seller's expense. And then let's say in another scenario, the survey is ordered, but the lender or title does not accept it for whatever reason that might be, then that's when it's negotiable, the buyer or the seller. You'll check one of those. So that's where your checking is right there. It's going to be at the seller's expense or the buyer's expense if it's not accepted. But that's what's different between 6, 2, and 3, which is just self-explanatory. Buyer order it, buyer expense, seller order it, seller expense. So hopefully that makes a little more sense. And so when you're filling out that contract, or the agent is filling out that contract for their buyer, and when or if you're a seller and you're getting presented offers from your agent, you want to make sure you understand it as well as the agent does, and that agent is explaining to you if anything is checked off in 6C1, that you understand it completely. And so that way there's no confusion. You don't want to get toward the end of closing date and see the closing disclosure and see the finances and who's paying for what, and you end up paying for that survey and you didn't know why and you did not accept that. So you want to make sure that you're on the same page and that title is on the same page, so when you get closer to those 3 days before closing, that you know where those finances and closing costs are going to, either you or to the buyer or to the seller. That's how you figure that out. And so hopefully that helps a little bit. It slowed it down. I also will be doing a video kind of more going into detail what a survey is for and why is important in a transaction. So that way, even if it is at your expense, you understand that it is important to have one and why. So hopefully you keep following and watching the videos, and hopefully, I know I keep saying that, hopefully that you understand it. And if you have any questions, just comment, and then I can always do another video answering your questions. Thank you.